Hello and welcome to the Collective Conspiracy Show. Thank you to everyone for joining, whether you're watching live or whether you're going to join us at a later time and a later date. Hope you're all keeping well. I'm not going to say Happy New Year. It's something I haven't said to anybody yet because I don't like to make promises that I can't keep. And I don't think it's going to be a Happy New Year, to be honest, the way it started. So, started as they've meant to go on, I think, lately with their more and more restrictions. There's probably another COVID show coming up soon, no doubt, between me and the lads. I think Andrew said he was going to join us tonight, so I'll bring him in if he does choose to join us. Yeah, it's a bit of a fun one tonight, really. Thought we'd talk about the Mandela Effect. So it's just a bit of light-heartedness, really. Nothing too serious, too deep. But if it's not something you've heard of before, it might mess you up a bit. It might make you rethink certain things that you thought you knew, and certain things that you thought were ingrained in your psyche, in your memory. It might make you question that, maybe. And this is going to be a very interactive show. All of our shows are interactive, but this is going to be very interactive. If any of you throughout the show can think of an example, or if you've got something to say about an example that I'm talking about, please just throw it up. I am intrigued to find out how many of you guys even know what the Mandela Effect is. I'm surprised at how many people I speak to who are into conspiracies don't really know what it is, or have never really heard of it. And in my opinion, it's a fascinating subject. Like I say, a bit of fun. It's quite light-hearted, but it does have the potential maybe to be a bit serious. It's a relatively new phenomenon, conspiracy, or whatever you want to call it. Really, it started in 2009, and it started with a lady called Fiona Broome, and basically she was talking at a conference in 2009, and she was speaking of how she remembered the South African, or the former South African president Nelson Mandela, dying in prison in the 80s. And obviously, as she said that to the conference, a lot of people piped up and said, "No, hang on a minute. He's not dead. He's still alive at the time in 2009. He's still alive. He came out of prison. The Free Nelson Mandela campaign was successful, and out he came. But she was adamant that she could remember him dying in prison. She could distinctly remember his funeral, and she was surprised at how many people actually backed her up and had similar memories to her, even corresponding certain particular memories about the televised funeral, certain things that they both remembered, little things, little details about maybe what his children were wearing at the funeral and stuff. It was very detailed, the memories, and they were all adamant, more than a handful of people, that he'd actually died in the 1980s. However, of course, well, I was going to say, of course, he didn't, but we don't know. So he did die in 2013. Like I say, once he'd been released from prison. But once she kind of started to delve more into this, she found that more people had, should we call them mismemories, or false memories, or maybe correct memories, we don't know, of other events throughout history as well, recent and long since gone. So because of this, she actually went and wrote a book, and you can find the book. I think it must be online or something now. I think it's called The Mandela Effect: Theories and Explanations. So she outlines certain theories as to what it is, and gives examples of what it is. So the reason it's called the Mandela Effect is because it really came around from the mismemory, or the false memory, of Nelson Mandela dying in the 1980s in prison. It's really something when somebody has a clear memory of something that's never happened in this reality, and that's quite important, particularly when we talk about theories and what it could be. In this reality, Nelson Mandela didn't die in the 80s; he died in 2013. But many people, and like I say, complete strangers really will remember exact events or exact things throughout history, not just to do with Nelson Mandela, and remember particular identical things as well, right down to the minutest of details. It's a really fun topic, in my opinion, a really fun conspiracy theory. Quite often we get quite bogged down with conspiracy theories, and they're quite depressing, and they're quite all-consuming, really, I guess, once you go down the rabbit hole. And we're living it now, aren't we, with the COVID thing, I often joke that we're living in conspiracy bingo at the moment, because you could watch any news briefing and just eyes down for a full house. Mandatory masks, tick. Vaccination passports, tick. And before you know it, you've got a line, you've got two lines, and you've got a full house. So I thought I'd, first show of the year, try and make it a little bit lighthearted, a little bit of fun, something you can all join in on, with some examples. So firstly, we're going to talk about the theories of this. So what could possibly cause this? And again, this is interactive, so please just, jump on in the comments. Put your name. If you have to, either allow StreamYard to give me your name, or just put your name at the end of the comments so I know who it is that's talking. Otherwise, I just get Facebook user. So I can see someone's used Looney Tunes and Looney Tunes as an example. Not sure who that is, but you're cheating. That was a picture that I put for the show on the group. But yeah, it's a very good example, and we'll come to that later. So what theories could we have around the possibility of this actually being a real phenomenon? So a few scientists, apparently, and privately, of course, because they'd be I guess they'd be struck off, really, and they'd lose their careers if they were to openly question something like this. But they have questioned whether certain quantum science tests, and we're talking about things like the CERN project here, so that big machine that kind of bashes atoms together at an enormous rate to basically try and instigate the Big Bang again. Was it possible that happened? And what they've done is they've created a false reality, or another reality. So the Big Bang that they were trying to replicate worked, and it worked a little too well, and they've created another reality, and we're now existing in that reality where certain things are slightly different. A few people saying hello, so hi to everyone that's commenting. Some people I can't see, so sorry, but Shanna Maria, hi, hope you're doing well. So that's one possible theory, that quantum science tests have maybe gone a little bit too far, and maybe they've unleashed a new universe. Very science fiction, very something out of a Marvel comic or something. But, very possible when you look at the tests that they're doing, and particularly when you delve deep into quantum physics and get a better understanding of that. And it does link slightly to my own personal theories when it comes to the paranormal and spirits and ghosts and stuff like that. So I was put, is it because everything is holographic and there's a glitch in the matrix? Paul from Unite Planet. Hi, Paul. Hope you're doing all right, mate. Possibly. If everything's holographic, it could also be because we create our own universe, and through that hologram, and maybe we're creating our own memories, and they are right. If I always say, people are colorblind. So if people see something in red and someone who's colorblind sees it in grey, that doesn't mean that they're wrong. In their universe, in their reality, it is grey. It's just that they're decoding that particular frequency differently. No one's right or wrong in their own reality. So that's one theory, getting slightly sidetracked. Another theory is possibly time slips. People have spoken about this in all seriousness when it relates to this theory, when it relates to the Mandela Effect. So time slips. Now, this could tie in as well with paranormal. And of course, paranormal encompasses such a wide range of things, anything outside of the normal. People often think that the paranormal is just ghosts or spirits. Of course, it's not. The paranormal can relate to other things such as UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot. It's outside of the normal. So when we see a UFO, maybe it was a time slip into the future. When we see a ghost, it could be a time slip into the past. So maybe these time slips are showing us alternate realities, and they're crossing over. I often tell the story about a guy who I spoke to a while ago now, who claimed to have been woken up about 9 or 10 o'clock at night to hear a banging in his bathroom. When he went to the bathroom, he opened the door cautiously, because he felt like there was a robber in his house, and he opened the door only to find himself cleaning his teeth and mooching around in his own bathroom. So imagine that he's seen himself. So that is a time slip. And is that what ghosts are? We're not actually seeing the spirits of dead people. What we're actually seeing is time slips where we're just witnessing somebody else existing in another reality, in another time zone, and we're just witnessing them go about their day. They walk through the wall because in their reality the wall isn't there, or the floor's a bit higher so it looks like they're floating. Maybe they walk past and see you and go and tell their wife or their husband about some strange person they've just seen in their house when it's you. But again, I digress. Such a fascinating topic. So time slips could be another theory. And a third theory, which kind of ties into the other two that we've just mentioned here, is alternate realities. So alternate realities existing side by side. And have we crossed into one? Once, many times. Some people with different memories, maybe people who remember certain things differently. So Nelson Mandela, if someone remembers him dying in the 80s, maybe he did in an alternate reality. And when these realities have merged, whether it be through CERN or quantum scientific tests or anything like that, when the realities have merged, maybe some people have come across into this reality and some people have come across into the other reality, and hence the mismatch of memories that people have got. I think the more that people dig into quantum physics and experiment and research this kind of thing, I think it's becoming, in my opinion, more and more obvious that there are coexisting alternate realities, and even if you just think about timelines, and again, going back to the paranormal, hi Barry Depp, hope you're doing well, mate. So if we go back to the timelines, we think about how everything is now. So we often talk about this. There is no past, because it's gone. There is no future because it hasn't happened yet. There is only the now, and in the past, it wasn't the past, it was now. And in the future, it won't be the future, it will be now. So there is only now. If you're playing bingo and you have now, I'm assuming you've got a full house there. So there is only the now. So is it possible that all these timelines, we have this conversation again in an hour, and then we have it again in an hour, and it keeps happening on loop? And if that's the case, then I think you have to accept that there are these alternate realities, these alternate timelines, these parallel universes. And is it possible that we've kind of crossed over, and this is where we're getting these memories from, these mismemories from, or these false memories from? So they're the theories. Again, just whack it in the comments if anyone's got any other theories. I'm sure I saw someone comment up the top. Did someone say something about it being? I know, Paul, you said it was about being a holographic universe. Absolutely right. I think it's real. Must be a technology. Who knows? I mean, if it is, if someone's doing it to us on purpose, I can't see why. I mean, I'm sure I remember a world where we could go outside and we weren't prisoners, and the healthy weren't an illness to the other healthy, and we didn't have to wear masks and stuff like that. But that might be a false memory. Maybe that's a different universe. It sounds cool though, doesn't it? It sounds like a nice universe. So they're the theories. Now causes, and what I mean here is not causes of the actual phenomenon itself, but causes of why people experience the phenomena on a personal level. And I did some digging, I've done some research, and I've got my own thoughts on this. And what we have really is potentially false reporting or faulty reporting, incorrect media quotes. Now that's really important because as we're learning now through the situation we're living in, if people say something enough, if people tell a lie enough, or they tell a falsity enough, it becomes the truth. It becomes accepted. And we know about these happen in everyday life. Old wives' tales, rubber your nan's golden wedding ring on your eye and it gets rid of a sty, or put toothpaste on a zit and it gets all of this stuff that people think works, because it's been told through generations after generations, and we accept that it's true. And I think that's possibly what could be happening here. So let's take certain examples that we will come back to in a bit more detail, but there are things like someone's mentioned about Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump, and that's a very good example. So Tom Hanks supposedly says life is like a box of chocolates, but what he actually says in this reality is life was like a box of chocolates. It's a big difference. It completely changes the tense of the situation. You've gone from present to past. And a lot of people obviously remember it as is. Now, is it because that line has obviously been quoted so many times, in things such as The Simpsons, in Family Guy, in sketch shows, in comedy shows? It's been quoted everywhere. And all it takes is for one person to misquote or mishear, and then that gets repeated in the next parody and in the next parody until eventually that just becomes as accepted. Is. He does say life is like a box of chocolates. And when people watch the film, because they're not really listening out for it, they're just accepting that that's what he's saying. They don't really notice that little change, that little word that's slightly different. So maybe that is what's going on there. Incorrect quotes and people just repeating it and that becoming the truth. The other possibility is something that's called or known as confabulation. Now, confabulation is kind of like a herd mentality kind of thing. So people suggesting that they remember something a particular way and other people agreeing with it or going along with it, despite having no memory of it themselves. So this is evident also in paranormal investigations. I keep coming back to paranormal because that's what I do. And it's really interesting when you can draw correlations between that, the psychology of that and the psychology of other phenomena as well. So quite often on paranormal investigations, someone will say, "Oh, I'm cold," or "Oh, can you feel that?" or "Did you see that?" And it's amazing the amount of people that say, "Yes, I feel cold, and yes, I saw that, and yes, I felt that." And that's not to say that they're lying or they're not telling the truth, but it's almost this kind of knock-on effect, this domino effect, where because someone else has said it, now somebody else also feels it. Maybe you work in an office and someone says they're cold and they need to put the heating on. And just because they've said that, all of a sudden you feel a bit cold and you want the heating on as well. So all it takes is for one person to have a mismemory and to tell you something, that's what the program was, or that's what the film said, or that's what the song lyric was. All it takes is for that, and then it's in your memory as well. And then you kind of tell that to somebody else and it becomes Chinese whispers, and you lose the originality and you lose the real quote or the real line or the song line or whatever it might be. And another possibility is, as we've mentioned before, false memories. So incorrect memories. Very simple. It doesn't really need much explaining, but just not remembering something correctly. So how many times has anyone, I'm sure you all have, been thinking back to when something bad happened or just thinking back on any kind of memory, and it's always slightly different in your mind, and obviously the longer it goes the more you forget, so you have to fill the blanks in somewhere to give yourself the illusion of a full memory. Otherwise it's just very blanky, very gappy. So you have to plug the gaps with something, and the chances of you plugging those gaps with something that's wrong are very, very high. And isn't it interesting that when you always recount your memories, you always exaggerate certain things depending on what the memory is? So if you're having a bad day, or the memory is of a bad day, let's say, I don't know, you went for a job interview and your car broke down and you didn't get the job and it was raining. Every time you remember that memory, every time you tell someone about that memory, that rain starts to come down a little harder and your car broke down a little bit worse. And it cost you more money to fix it. Every time you tell the memory, and the rain was worse. Now it's thundering and it's lightning and you got soaked. So every time you tell it, it changes slightly. So could that be what's happening when people think about movies, particularly these older films such as Star Wars or Jaws or Forrest Gump now? They haven't watched it for a while and they just mismemorize it. And then if we could link these together, someone mismemorizes it, so they falsely report it or they incorrectly quote it in a film or in a comedy sketch. Then other people begin to watch it, so that herd mentality, that confabulation kicks in, so they start to remember it like that. So it's all quite linked. And of course, the last possible cause, there could be more, just let me know in the comments, but the ones I could think of were mental health. So it's possible that certain events, so Nelson Mandela dying or anything like that, could be linked to certain personal events for that particular person. And changing the memory slightly helps them deal with a particular situation that they were going through or anything like that. And changing that memory helps them. And therefore it becomes normal. That's what happened, or that's how it was. So some really interesting possible causes there and theories. And I hope you're learning here that this is how conspiracy theories really work. You get something that's a bit of a phenomenon. It's a bit strange. It's a bit out of the ordinary. And the more you dig and the more you research, you can find so many offshoots for it. And it might be paranormal. It might be extraordinary, or it might just be someone completely memorizing it, misquoting it, and it kicks off a whole conspiracy theory just because somebody can't remember that Nelson Mandela died in 2013, not in the 1980s. Someone's put, I remember when Mars bars were so much bigger and better in taste. I think that's just because you're bigger. Because I'm the same. I can actually get a twirl for American viewers. I don't know if you have twirls, but I can get a twirl, which used to be quite big. I can now get it in my mouth sideways. Absolutely unbelievable. Well, I don't know if it's just because my mouth's got bigger. Maybe, I don't know. Dennis commented, just joined. Have you spoke about the Simpsons yet? Hi, Dennis. How they seemingly predict the future. Yeah, I mean, that's slightly off topic there, Dennis. But yeah, absolutely. There's so much evidence of the Simpsons predicting the future. Is that actually what's going on? Who the hell knows? Also, guys, just want to kind of break off a bit. Down the bottom here, if you see this little banner going across, I am this weekend taking part in a campaign, a festival that is for charity, really. And it's raising funds for CALM, which is the campaign against living miserably, which we all bloody are at the moment. And yeah, so it's going to be a festival of the unexplained. There's going to be loads of speakers, interviews, presentations, mainly about the paranormal, but there are other things going on. I will be interviewing Chris McKinnon, the grandson of Lorraine Warren, and I am interviewing Kenny Irish, who is a crypto-punkologist. So he looks at things like Bigfoot and cryptozoology and stuff like that. And that's on the Saturday, and on Sunday I am giving a presentation about my case study that I did on a haunted house in Essex. So I'll be showing some fascinating, brilliant, great evidence of paranormal activity, and it'd be great if you guys could join in. That will be on the Sunday, I believe, at 11 a.m. UK time. So if you can't get it live, just tune in on YouTube. You'll get it there as well at a later date. So that's Festival of the Unexplained. Go over to the Keep On Chatting network. You can like it there and you can tune in through there. And I will be talking this weekend several times. So you'll have several chances to capture me. Now, Andrew's joined, which is great. I'm just going to bring Andrew in. Hi, Andrew. Hope you're doing well, mate.
Hello, Kieran. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. I've just spent 20 minutes filling everyone in on what the Mandela Effect is. Really, obviously, just trying to explain a few causes, really, and a few theories about what it could be. Things such as from mental health to people just kind of herd mentality, someone remembering it wrong, and so somebody else won't remember it wrong, and Chinese whispers happens, but also what possibly caused it. And we spoke about CERN and possibly quantum scientific experiments that have happened to create alternate realities. Maybe there were time slips. Maybe there are existing alternate realities now, and we're crossing between them every day, every hour. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. It's not something myself I've had any direct experience of, really. I've certainly had a few conversations about it. You might know Carl James, who has written the books on science fiction and the hidden global agenda, and a couple of others that he's done. And he told me that he'd had quite a sort of Mandela effect experience. I think he talked about this in some interview that he did with Mark Devlin or something like that a couple of years ago. And he was saying, he had memories of knowing this girlfriend or something earlier in life. And then he had a conversation with one of his friends about it. And he says, no, he didn't, this girl was called something else and she was a different age and it was a different girl. Something like this, I can't remember the exact details that Carl told me. But, he didn't know quite what to make of it all because he didn't really necessarily accept that this Mandela effect was anything other than just storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Then it kind of happened to him, and he couldn't quite explain it. So he was more sort of became more interested in it because of that. And I remember having this conversation about some specific instances. The one that I think we mentioned this on off air last week or when I last spoke to you, and it was the the old Dick Dastardly and Muttley in I think it's called Stop the Pigeon.
Yeah,
and it was so we had this big argument going on, and it was Stop the Pigeon or Catch the Pigeon, and people were remembering it, as Catch the Pigeon.
That's how I remember it.
I think it's I can't remember which way around it is now, but I actually had the theme tune on my phone because I used to collect TV theme tunes, so I was able to whip this out and play it. And again, I'd have to go do that now to actually decide which one it was. But it's that type of thing where people were insistent that it was Catch the Pigeon, and it wasn't. It was Stop the Pigeon. And then again, you get into things like these commonly misconstrued things like "Beam Me Up, Scotty" from Star Trek, and as trekkers or trekkies, trekkers they prefer to be known as. And I'm sort of a bit of a trekker. I have been to a few Star Trek conventions in my day. And none of this dressing up stuff. I didn't get into that.
No,
I mean, I probably looked like an alien enough not to need to dress up. But in relation to that, where was I going with the Star Trek reference?
It was beam us up, Scotty.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, no, he never said that. He never said beam me up, Scotty. He never said beam us up, Scotty. Not in the original series. I think the closest he came was Kirk said, Scotty, 3 to beam up. Something like
right,
that.
Okay.
So he never actually said it, and people think that he did. So. And what I found, and it's the same. The other famous one, of course, is the from Casablanca, isn't it? Where he says, Humphrey Bogart is alleged to have said, "Play it again, Sam," and he never said that. That was never in the film. He said,
okay.
"I've told you, Sam, never to play that or never to play it again." I can't remember the exact quote.
It's that's a little bit before my time, that one.
Sure.
I've got some. I've got several examples on a presentation that I thought we could go through, and
Sure.
And really just look at them. So bear with me because I am absolutely awful at sharing this screen.
But I mean, what I found is that most of these things, while you're getting that up, what I was leading on to sort of point out is that the things that I've heard to do with the Mandela Effect have primarily been to do with things like song titles, song lyrics, film appearances, or film titles, that sort of thing. It almost the things that I've come across when this was doing the rounds were, not I think 90% of them were to do with. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Flipping cool, that is. That was they were all to do with. Song lyrics, as I say, or film. In other words, cultural things. It was much less common to find experiences like the one with Carl James that I talked about with him and this girlfriend that he apparently.
Yeah, that's quite a personal one, isn't it? That's quite...
Right.
Yeah, that's like you say. It's millions of people have heard other things, the same songs, the same. So you could argue that. Well, that means millions of people can't be wrong if they mishear it. But it also means that certain famous lines will be parodied commonly, and they might be parodied wrong or incorrectly. But for someone, to remember a girlfriend, his own girlfriend, and then other people not that's strange in my opinion.
Definitely,
I do find that strange. Now I am struggling to share here, Andrew. I'm kind of going to application window, and there is nothing there for me to share, even though the application's open. So I don't know.
We might have to. Have you got two screens or just the one screen?
I've just got my laptop screen.
Right.
It did this last time, and then I closed it, and then it worked again. But
okay, we'll give it another go. See if it comes up. I mean, what you could do is, if you want, it'll take a few seconds probably, but you could sort of drop it to me on Facebook, and I can open it on my computer and work it for you or something. Because I've got two screens then.
Let's do that.
Might be a way around it.
Do you have do you want to put your email address in the chat and I'll send it via there?
Yeah, I'll do that if I can.
Sorry, guys, live TV here.
Live messing about here. There we go. I've put that in the chat. That's in the
Okay,
private
great.
chat, not that my email is private. So
I'll attach it.
I'll spin that open for you.
I got all this ready, thinking this will be really professional. This will look really good. In a different reality, this worked. This worked in a different reality. This is a Mandela Effect.
This is it. That's
Happening
what
right
it is.
now.
Really.
Right.
Also, that using the name Nelson Mandela or Mandela, it reminds me of that Shaggy Dog story where the punchline is, so you're not Nissan main dealer. It was to do with all these car parts being sent to
I
the
remember
wrong place.
that. Yeah,
I remember that joke.
That was that's an old joke. That one.
It is very old. It's Shaggy Dog story. Where these were really long jokes with a ridiculous sort of punchline behind it.
Yeah, right. I've sent that now, so you'll just get an email from
Let me
Kieran.
just try and get.
So let's go to the comments. I know some people have said about certain things that they've misremembered. Some people have mentioned ones that I'm going to talk about, so I don't want to go jump the gun a little bit there. But people have also mentioned Looney Tunes. Now that's something I had as the picture for the show, so we'll talk about that one. But that one is interesting, Looney Tunes, because in my mind, it was Looney Tunes. Because they're cartoons. It doesn't make sense for it to be Looney Tunes. I don't really remember them singing in it. There was no real song going on. So it just, in my mind, it doesn't make sense for it to be tunes. They are cartoons, so Looney Tunes. But it's not that I remember it being Looney Tunes. It just makes sense in my mind for it to be Looney Tunes. So again, there's that example of, do people remember it how they want to remember it, if that makes sense? Are they not remembering it how it actually was? It's just how they want to. What I did do, Andrew, while you're sorting that out, was talk about how it's very closely related to paranormal investigating. How when you're on a ghost hunt, certain people will pick up on that herd mentality, and if somebody says they're feeling cold, somebody else will say they feel cold. It's not that they're lying, it's just this kind of we are very suggestive as a species. You only have to watch the BBC every day to learn that that's true. And so I think that it is easy for people to be convinced of a memory that actually never happened.
Yeah, I think again it's something that comes up as you say, in the study of the paranormal in general. So so there you go. That's your slide now, hopefully.
Nice
so
one.
I can just work it.
Yeah, so if you go down to the picture of Nelson, that will be the first one, obviously.
Okay. Do you want to carry on through the slides?
Keep going.
There we go then. Yeah. All right. Yeah, there's Nelson.
That's the one. So this is point one. Now, we've already spoke about this. It's the cornerstone of the theory, really, the reason it's called the Mandela Effect. So countless people distinctly remember him dying in the 1980s. I wasn't born then. I wasn't born till 89. So I don't have much memory of that. And some can even recall his funeral on TV and the minutest of details at that funeral. But in this reality, he's reported as dying in 2013 after he was freed from prison. So that's really what kickstarted this theory. So if I'm going to do a Chris Whitty here, Andrew, and just say, next slide, please. Just spoke about this one. So Looney Tunes or Looney Tunes, as I put there, just doesn't make sense. do you remember this one, Andrew? Because you'd have probably watched this as a youngster.
That is a good one as well, because I hadn't really thought of this until you raised the example. I haven't discussed the Mandela Effect that much, but I don't know why it's gone on to the next one. It might be just my computer just chugging away and changing the slides. So it's a weird one, isn't it? I haven't really thought about that, and I think in my mind I did think it was Looney tunes, as in music.
So you remember it differently then?
A little bit, but I remember it not being clear in my mind whether the tunes was referring to a tune or a cartoon. So, and I think that in my own mind, thinking of it subconsciously, I knew that there was a difference between the way that American English was used and British English was used. Yeah. So that was all kind of floating around in my subconscious. So I don't I don't know. I couldn't say that it was one or the other
No,
without.
I mean, Libby said in the comments that she remembers Toons. Yeah, right on, Libby. That's exactly what I remember. It just makes sense to me. It's just loony. They're cartoons, and they were a bit loony, a bit crazy. So it just makes sense. I just can't. I can't. This is a personal one to me because I used to watch this, and I just can't get my head around it. Next slide, please. Curious George. Now, having a 1-year-old son, this is a firm favourite on the TV screen lately.
Yeah.
This and Fireman Sam, and I don't know. God, it makes sense for him to have a tail,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have one now. As I say, I watch it every day. He doesn't have a tail, but there are people that can remember him having a tail, and they said they had books when they were children with a tail.
They probably just removed his tail to make you more curious, though, didn't they?
Absolutely, it's. Where did it go? They could do a whole series about that. Again, Libby says she was born in 1965. He always had a tail. Well, I'm sorry, Libby, but he doesn't. He doesn't have a tail.
Oh,
As I said,
it's interesting then. Yeah.
Yeah, we will challenge viewers.
So where's this character from? Because I'm not familiar. I must have been living in somewhere else. So I'm not.
Curious
I'm in a
George,
different.
he was in books, and he was kind of it's American,
Right.
and
Okay.
he was kind of like we used to have Noddy and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, and he was
But he
there.
was just like a children's character.
Yeah, I never saw this character in my
No,
youth.
no.
Definitely.
No, I think obviously when your generation, like my dad, everything was English. You didn't really get many American imports. Not like now, where most stuff on TV is American. It's actually rare now to sit down and watch a British drama or a British film. So next one, please. What else do we have? Now this isn't something I'm prone to watch, but
yeah.
What would you say it is, Andrew?
Well, I would say it is Sex and the City, because this is one of those things. When I first came across this program, my wife used to watch it. I never was not a sort of thing I ever liked, really.
No.
And I was kind of put off by the title a little bit,
Yeah.
But and it's one of those things. When I first heard it spoken of, so I've just watched this Sex in the City, and I thought it was in. And then,
so did I. I've always thought of it as Sex in the City because of what the program was about. But again, particularly with English accents or whatever, the way we talk, it's very easy when you talk to mishear the word in and and. They're very, very similar, particularly when people abbreviate the word and to just an un, like a rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly.
So to say, sex in the city or sex in the city, to me that can be easily heard as in.
Yeah.
I think we can explain that one away. I think we've debunked.
I think so. Yeah, I would say so. But again, you've got that image there. Is that photoshopped image on the left, or is that just?
No, it's a perfume. So the one on the right is the front of a series, DVD, so it's front of the DVD, and on the left it's a perfume. But that's all I could get. But people do remember it as being Sex in the City.
Yeah.
So that's the other interesting thing that you say there, actually, Andrew, is there is not really much evidence to back up what people can remember. If someone could produce a DVD to show that DVD saying Sex in the City, we might have something to go on. But no one can. The only example I can think of two. One guy had an interview. Is it Interview with a Vampire or something?
Right. Yeah, I remember that title. Yeah.
And it's actually Interview with the Vampire or Interview a Vampire. I can't remember which way around it was. And one guy claimed that he had the DVD at the bottom of his bed on a shelf. And the one day when he'd heard that it had changed, he went back and it had changed, and he distinctly remembers it being different. And he claims that the writing on his DVD physically changed. And the other example I can think of is Ford. Now, I don't have this to hand, but if anyone looks at the logo for Ford, and when the line goes through the F, it has a little swirl on it. Yeah. And people are saying that never existed. And someone actually had I'm sure you can dig this out, but someone had a car battery from like the 50s.
Yeah.
and it had Ford written on it, and he had without that swirl in it. But people claimed that it's always been there, and that's the only two pieces of evidence that I can think.
And I think the latter one with the Ford one, you can, something like a battery, for example, you could explain that away by saying, well, that had a sticker on it or something that was printed at a certain factory. And that factory might have not had the exact logo to hand to make the sticker. They might have, had they not had the right designs there, so they just drew one themselves, kind of, so they could finish the order and get the bloody things out of the factory.
That's right.
So even that, although you might argue, the logo's definitely changed back, through some time warp or something like that, there are other more simple explanations that can be applied and are probably more likely to be correct. But the thing with all this, of course, is it's a bit like the argument of saying, I was having this. There's this guy that writes to me from California. He's quite an interesting guy, but he's sort of slightly annoying.
I have not watched it.
Articles. He described himself as a compulsive writer. And he keeps ribbing me about, this proves that we're living in a simulation, and he's gone on and on about this because of all the weird things that are happening, with Trump and all of this, and UFOs and aliens and all this stuff. It proves that we're living in a simulation, he says. And I kind of say, well, I suppose we might be living in a simulation, but we're basically living in whatever we're living in. You know what I mean? It might be a simulation. It might be a gigantic cosmic fish tank. We're actually.
It's right because I often hear people say, the Earth's flat, the Earth's round, we live on the back of a turtle, and in my opinion, it's all holographic anyway. But like, what does it matter? What matters to me is what's happening on Earth, in this reality, and what's actually affecting us on a day-to-day basis. Right. I couldn't give it a toss really if we're living on the back of a turtle or in a gigantic fish tank. That's completely irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
Oh God. Next one. What we got next? I can't remember. Henry VIII. So the one on the left is obviously massively photoshopped, but people seem to remember this. Obviously, this is a famous portrait of Henry VIII, and people seem to remember him having a turkey leg in his right hand. Like I say, the one on the left is Photoshop, but that's how people remember it. Now, I've put here, is that just because he's so associated with overeating? Like I would be pictured with a twirl in my mouth or something. But is he associated with a turkey leg because he eats too much? I don't remember that. I never remember being at school looking at him with a turkey leg.
It's weird, isn't it? I've not heard of that one. And obviously photoshopped on the left. But it's bizarre that.
Yeah, if you look closely, you can just see the family feast KFC bucket in the background.
Either that, or it was some misconstrued Bernard Matthews marketing campaign. Don't know if he's still going.
That's what got him. Next one, please. Now someone's already mentioned this further up. Someone's already mentioned this, so well done.
Okay.
The monocle on the Monopoly Man. So he doesn't actually have one. So the picture on the right there is the correct one. Now people claim that people are getting confused with Planter's peanut mascot, which I've put there at the bottom, obviously.
Okay.
How? I don't know how people. He's wearing a top hat, but it's a nut. I don't know how people could get confused between a peanut and a man. I don't know. The monocle looks right to me. It looks right that he wears a monocle. If someone would have said to me before I'd even looked at this, does Monopoly Man wear a monocle? I'd have said yes.
Yeah, I probably would as well. I mean, I'm trying to recall it, but it's not a strong image in my memory. And again, you'd need to do the research and see. They might have, like, pre-sort of 1970s, he might have had a monocle, and then after 1970, that looks a bit old-fashioned. We'll modernise it a bit, and we don't want to put full glasses on him because he looks like a nerd. So we'll just take the monocle off him.
Maybe there was like I don't know what they call them, but maybe they manufactured an edition wrong.
Yeah.
Or a limited edition maybe where he had a monocle, and that's what
Right.
people
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
People
And
remember
of
that
course,
monocle.
we've had these different versions of Monopoly in more recent years, haven't we? Which my kids got hold of,
Oh,
and I didn't know they existed. Like there's a
everything you can think of, everything. There's
that's
credit
right. There is
card,
now, isn't there? Yeah.
credit
Yeah.
card
Yeah.
monopoly, obviously to get you used to a
That's it.
cashless society.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Simpsons monopoly, Harry Potter monopoly. I actually read an article the other day that some guy has spent something like £15,000 on all the variations of monopoly,
Really.
and the picture behind him was just his room that was
Yeah.
stacked to the rafters of Monopoly. And then the finishing line was, he actually doesn't like the game.
Yeah.
I was like, right, but he spent £15,000 collecting all of them. I was like, God, the mind boggles. Well, I'm sure he could tell you that he probably
I
never
think they
wears a
should
monocle.
allow other people to make those games those, because otherwise they've got a monopoly on it, haven't they?
Next slide, please.
Yeah, very hastily, I think, to the next slide after that.
Pikachu. Now, this is a personal one to me because I grew up. I distinctly remember being threatened with suspension at primary school because we were illegally trading Pokemon cards in the playground. We had a shoebox of Pokemon cards, and we told people for 50p they could pick a card, and there was so many rare cards in there. And of course, there wasn't. They were all the crap cards, and we just basically rinsed all the children of 50p. So they kept coming back for the rare cards, and it was quite naughty, really. But yeah, so I definitely remember there being black on the tail because it tied in with his ears. And even the shape there, with a little kind of triangle zigzaggy shape, that is exactly what I remember. But apparently, no, he has a brown base at the bottom of his tail. You can see on the picture on the road, and has no black tip on his tail. That's absolutely wrong for me. That's not what I remember at all.
Interesting, yeah, because something like that, you become like, to me, I know Pikachu, from my nephews and nieces and things like that, but not a detail I would have picked up on. But when you're a kid and you sort of intently focused on it, that's it. You have that sort of full image in your mind, don't you?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's what I have. Like I say, it was a huge part of my childhood. My mum and dad will tell you. God knows how much they spent on Pokemon cards for me. Yeah, very interesting. Someone's just commented there, Ryan. He's put Ace Ventura: Pet Detectives. That's a film with Jim Carrey. He's used a naughty word. He takes the Mickey out of a bloke who looks like the Monopoly guy who wears a monocle. So I remember that. There's a scene where there's a guy wearing a monocle and he starts calling him the Monopoly Man. So if that's wrong, is that how things like this happen? It's what I spoke of earlier. This kind
maybe.
of
But then again, you could say that the Monopoly in the US had the monocle and the one in the UK didn't, or something like that.
Absolutely.
You have to try and establish that, and that can be quite difficult to find out. Sort of.
It can be, but Libby, who's commenting, she's American. If you're not Libby, sorry. If you are, great. She says she wants to go into a basement and check Monopoly games. Go, Libby, go. Go and check that Monopoly game and let us know if he has a monocle or not. Because all it takes is for a very famous film like Ace Ventura to misquote, and then everybody seems to think that he wears a monocle. That's all it takes. Just something like that. Next slide. Kit Kats now again for I don't know if they have this in America, but people seem to remember there being an abbreviation between the kit and the cat, but there isn't. It's just Kit Kat. What do you think of this? I've got no thoughts on this really.
It's a tough one for me as well. I tend to miss sort of small details like that really. So I'm not sure really what it would have been. And again, there can be variations due to sort of marketing preferences, and there's lots of different types of Kit Kat now, aren't there?
There are, yeah. And the wrapper never stays on long enough, to be honest, for me to even.
Well, right, you just get chocolate in your gob, really. Don't look at bloody dashes and dots and get that chocolate in my gob.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. That's a nothing for me. Next. This is a big one. Big one for me. Now, if I was in a quiz, if I was in a quiz and I hadn't looked at this, and someone said, spell the Flintstones, you'd think, that's an easy question. I would have spelt it on the left.
I definitely would.
Would
I
you have as
definitely,
well?
yeah, definitely. I've
But
never
doesn't it?
heard of this being Flintstones.
No, but doesn't that make sense? They're cavemen, Flint.
Right, right. Of
Of
course.
course,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
Flint,
exactly.
exactly. But for me, it was never that. It, it was
No,
Flintstone. But again, with language and how we talk, if you asked a 2-year-old to spell yellow, the amount of people that say yella would put
yeah.
Yella. That's just how we talk. So Flintstones, it's just easy to miss out that T,
Mm,
and that
mm,
becomes
mm.
accepted. But that's a big one for me. That's up there with Pikachu, because
Interesting.
for me there was no T. Libby's come back. She's gone and checked. Bless, thank you. No monocle. She's surprised. So
There
there is
you go.
no monocle even across the pond.
Mm,
So
mm.
Flintstones, to everyone watching, that's a big one. Most people will be familiar with the Flintstones. What do you think of that? Put in the comments. Did you have a T or do you not have a
I'm
T?
definitely a T on that one.
You are a T.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
You've
yeah. No, no doubt. I've always had Flintstone. I've always had it as Flintstones in my mind.
See, I'm the opposite. No chance. No, it makes sense though. So I think I'm just
Right,
wrong. I think I'm just
right.
wrong. Next. Right, someone mentioned this earlier, so we're on to movie quotes now. So, life is like a box of chocolates. It was actually, life was like a box of chocolates. But as I've put there, that means it doesn't really make sense because the next line he says is, you never know what you're going to get. But if you're sticking to the tense, surely it should be, you never knew what you would get. Because if life was like, you're in the past tense. So, you never knew what you would get. So, to cross tenses like that doesn't make sense. Am I looking at it too deep? I don't. I don't.
Maybe. I mean, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking about this is Forrest Gump, right? Unless I'm
Yeah.
uh, barking up the wrong tree. So the nature of that film, such as some of it was told in flashback, wasn't it? Some of it was just him, doing stuff, and then I think he was narrating like he was saying, "Oh, I remember saying, oh, then I met the president, then I had to go and meet the president again."
That's it.
So he's got the voiceover. So if he's saying actually life was like a box of chocolates, and he's referring to a period in the film in his narration, rather than actually talking to somebody in like sat on the park bench, that's where the script tenses might seem a bit
Mm-hmm. No,
wrong, because part of it is actually presented in the time, and then part of it is actually presented in narrative, in the narration.
that's
So
yep. That makes sense to me.
so that might be the source of that one, perhaps.
But a massive misquote. But again, ism was very easy to miss here, and I have obviously gone and looked at it and looked at the
Yeah,
film, and it is right. He does say was like a box of chocolates.
right.
Dennis has commented he doesn't remember Pikachu having a black tail and never noticed the T in the Flintstones. I was mad on both shows as a kid. Right, so he's kind of between us both there, then, Andrew.
Mm,
Really,
mm,
he's remembering different ones completely to us. Next, I think there's another film on
okay.
next.
Oh,
Snow
yeah, right.
White. So, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? So, no, it was magic mirror on the wall. I don't remember that. I just remember mirror, mirror.
Yeah, I thought it was mirror, mirror on the wall as well. But magic mirror makes more sense in the
Of course it does.
context of the
It
thing.
does.
Yeah,
So again, that's probably such a wildly quoted.
I think that's like a beam me up Scotty one.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, yeah. That's it.
I
Yeah,
think it probably is.
misquoted. I think that's all it
Yeah,
all
I
it takes.
think so. I think
Yeah.
so. And it's a
What?
bit more poetic with the mirror, mirror, isn't it? So it's one of those things where you tend to do a little rhyme to yourself,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
to be a
yeah,
bit
yeah,
sort of cultural or whatever, or imaginative,
yeah.
or dramatic. Because mirror, mirror is like a bit more drama, isn't it? Whereas the magic mirror is a bit more in the context of actually the
In the
story.
program. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay. What's
um,
the next one? Here we go. Here we go. This is the most famous one when it comes to Mandela Effect film line. So someone mentioned this earlier as well in the comments. Luke, I am your father. Now I've watched things like Family Guy and The Simpsons where
yeah,
they've ripped this off, and even they say Luke, I am your father. So this is where we get that misquoting that we spoke about, that kind of herd mentality where someone gets it wrong once, that's all it takes.
mm,
He actually says. "No, I am your father." I think I'm not a very big Star Wars fan, but I've watched it, and Luke says something to him, and he answers that with "No," and then follows it with "I am your father." So there is no Luke mentioned in it. What do you remember that?
I don't remember. I do remember the scene, obviously, but I can't remember the exact words. So I'm without going to check the actual scene, I couldn't remember what it was.
But the thing is, if
Uh,
you go and check the scene, you'll just get no. So that's the thing,
yeah,
because if that's what's in this reality, that's it now, and
that's it.
you'll never hear Darth Vader say, "Luke, I am your father," officially, anyway. Next.
Okay.
Right. Does Freddie sing "Of the World" at the very end of the song? So we are the champions. The song ends, and then he belts out "Of the World." A
I
lot of people
thought he
think
did.
he does.
Yeah, I think he
Yeah,
did in
yeah,
the song, but
and a
I'll
lot
have
of
to go
people
and check
think,
it now.
yeah. But apparently he doesn't, but he does at the end of some of his live shows. So I think at the end of Live Aid and at the end of Wembley, he does belt that out. So maybe, I mean, let's be honest, that performance at Live Aid is more famous than the actual recorded version. And if
Perhaps
that's what
it is.
people are
And I
looking
was going
for,
to say that we've got to remember that with things like this, there are often like 12-inch versions, remixes,
mhm, mhm.
and sort of unreleased versions and stuff.
Yeah,
So again, you'd have to probably go and find and check those versions that had been released, the non-live ones and stuff.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Particularly when they want after he's died and they want to milk it for all they can and get all the extra
yeah,
versions out, so
yeah,
the
yeah,
record company can make more money.
yeah.
Um,
That's right.
so again, I think I'm not saying we can explain that world away, and I did think he did sing "Of the World." I'd have to go and check the version because I've got Queen's Greatest Hits on my
Ah,
phone.
there
I
you
think
go. Yeah, that'll be the
so.
recorded version. So
Yeah,
he
so
won't say it. He won't say it at the end of that, apparently.
I'll have to check that then. Yeah.
Next, I don't know how many we've got left.
Okay.
Next, Jaws. So people remember this guy saying, I don't know his name, but saying we're gonna need a bigger boat because he's on the boat. So he's talking about the collective.
Yeah.
What he
Yeah.
actually says
Yeah.
is, you're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah. I remember the latter one. I think I remember your.
And I
Yeah.
remember where, but I only read. I mean, I've watched this film. I don't know.
Because I remember him talking to the boat owner, that whatever his name was. I can't remember the
Yeah,
actor's name.
yeah, yeah,
I remember him sort of looking in the water and saying, "Are you going to need a bigger boat?" I
yeah.
definitely remember
Yeah,
that
I
one.
mean, it's such a famous line.
Mm,
It's one of those films where it's normally on a Saturday night when I've had some alcohol, and I'll turn it on and it's already started, and so
yeah, yeah,
I've watched it completely, but at different times. So it's not one I'm massively familiar with,
yeah.
but I've heard, for me, the common quote is, "We're gonna need a bigger boat."
Mm,
Um, but no,
mm.
that's wrong. What do we have any more? What? How many
Let's just
more?
see. That's your lot, I think,
That's it.
Kieran. That's
Right. I
brilliant.
did just remember another one because we were talking about Ford. Now, Ford, obviously, yeah, I'll just remove that, Andrew, so it comes up.
Yep. I'll do a screen
Ford.
share.
So alongside Ford is Volkswagen. So if people can try and picture the Volkswagen logo, you have
Mm,
the V on top of the W. Now, I can't remember how it is now, but I think there's a gap between the V and the W. I'm actually not quite sure. Let me just Google this, just so I get it right. But apparently, and because whatever it is, that's not what I remember. So now there's a gap between the V and the W. Whereas people seem to remember it just being one solid logo with a V and the W all merging into one. But now it's like a V, a little gap, and the W underneath. So there's so many Mandela effects, as you've all seen there, that we've gone through. And
mm.
there were more, there were dozens more that I couldn't include. I mean, we're nearly out of time now. So it's a fascinating subject. What do you think, Andrew? Because we kind of explained some of them away there.
I mean, my overall view is that most of them are probably misremembering things, and not so much that, but like as we say, an example of the VW logo, that's probably evolved slightly over time, and they'll have rounded it or changed the spacing or decided that the placing of the letters looks more in fitting with the design of the rest of the car, if there's a little space or not a space or whatever it is. So I think things like that, and the Ford logo, another example, those designs do change over time, and you can see that if you look carefully. So I think some of it's explained by that. But the other thing to say in this whole thing is, it's like going back to the simulated reality thing. it may very well be that time isn't what we think it is, and there are some pretty well recorded stories about time slips and things like that. And one of the most interesting ones I came across was the one that was covered in the Michael Astral program, the Strange But True. I think it was 1992. Yeah, a lot of some very good programs he did within that series. And there was the one with the French, the family traveling down to France. So two couples, and they drove down to France. So this was four of them involved, and they got a bit lost and turned off the main road, and they went and stayed in this hotel. And they found this hotel, and they noticed it was opposite a police station. And they went in there and they saw this policeman drinking a glass of beer or wine or something with somebody, and they stayed the night there, and they got up the next day, and they paid, and they said, oh, it was 18 francs. I remember that number. And they thought, oh, for four people for a whole night, and this was at like 1970s, I think this took place, or late 60s. And they thought, wow, that's cheap, because 18 francs, it was at that time, you see, people probably remember, it's 10 francs to the pound. So
okay,
this was £1.80 for four people to stay in a hotel overnight. So even in the 70s, that was cheap, and then they sort of drove on to their final destination in France, because they were driving from England to the south of France. It was two couples from England. And then on the way back, they decided to try and stay there again, and they couldn't find this place. And they drove around, couldn't find it, and eventually ended up in this village, which they thought was the place that they stayed, but they couldn't find this hotel. It was a pretty small village. And then they started asking around, and they found this dilapidated old building, and it was opposite an old police station, Wow. And they even took some pictures as well when they were there. But when they got these pictures developed, there was nothing on them. They came out blank. And it's a straight. You should listen to. I think it was on the YouTube for a while. It's probably been taken off now, but you should listen to their account, because it's a fascinating story. Particularly with the two couples, and they couldn't explain what happened.
Wow.
And yet it seemed to sort of have a structure. So, just if they can have slipped back in time somehow by some weird process, whether they just all fell asleep and went into a collective dream. I mean, even that's pretty interesting. Or can our material things magically be changed according to an unfolding timeline? Like the blooming end of Back to the Future film, where the photograph changes when he's dissolving away in the photograph, isn't he? In Back to the Future, before he picks up his guitar and plays a tune and all of that. Does that really happen? I mean, they tell us that some of these Hollywood films, contain bits of reality, right? And they cue us for things and stuff. So maybe timelines are alterable, and maybe they do. Your video cassettes or DVDs do change their titles in the night when you're not looking. But how would you ever prove it? Because you can't prove it, because then in theory it would change all the DVD titles in the world, to be the version which you don't remember it being. So you're left with the actual physical evidence in your memory, and the two are then irreconcilable. So that's that overall. That's having thought about the Mandela effect, you kind of end up getting into a sort of bit of a dead end with it, I suppose you might say.
You do, and it's one of those where you could talk about it all night. Unfortunately, we can't. We have come to the end of the road for that one. Thank you to everyone for joining. Thank you, Andrew, for coming on as always.
Sorry, I was late.
It's okay. It's fine. Again, just to point out the little banner going across the bottom. This weekend, the Festival of the Unexplained is happening. There is the justgiving.com/Festival of the Unexplained. They are collecting donations for CALM, which is Campaign Against Living Miserably, which, as I say, we all are now. But no matter how miserable you think you're living, there are people that are living a lot worse. And the current situation is just magnifying that, really. So if you can, give what you can for that campaign, and also tune in on the weekend. There's plenty of shows, interviews, all about the paranormal and the unexplained. I will be doing 2 interviews on Saturday at midday and 4 p.m. UK time, and I will be doing my own presentation on Sunday at 11 a.m. giving my evidence from a case study from a haunted house I did in Essex, showing some great paranormal evidence there. So do tune in for that. If you want to watch any of our other shows, mine and Andrew's shows, you can get us on bitshoot.com and brand new tube. There are some uploaded to both sites. And if you go to Andrew's YouTube page, which is Check the Evidence, I believe you've started to upload videos.
I managed to load one of them. Yeah, I couldn't get the others because they're on private in the group. So anyway,
no, I'll send them to you.
Okay.
So if you go to Andrew's website, Check the Evidence. Is it .com?
Yeah.
.com, yeah. You can tune in there to a bunch of Andrew's stuff, all for free, because he's a lovely bloke. So thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, who knows what could happen in the Mandela Effect world. Maybe, as I say, we'll wake up tomorrow and we've shifted into a world where for some reason we don't have to wear masks and everything's normal and I can go down the bloody pub. But until then, take care of yourselves and we'll see you in the next show. Thank you.